This whole situation just exploded online. And it's not the financial records or legal papers people expected. What's making waves across Sister Wives social media is way more dramatic than that. Caleb Brush stood in front of his father-in-law on national television and said something Kody Brown never saw coming. "You've abandoned mom again, and I'm done staying silent." Just think about that for a second. The son-in-law who kept quiet for years, who always stayed diplomatic, just went completely off on camera while TLC was filming. This footage has already become the most analyzed clip in Sister Wives history. We're not talking about subtle family tension here. This is open rebellion, and it's coming from the last person anyone expected to challenge Kody directly. You can't overstate how bold this moment is. Caleb Brush has always been the guy who minded his own business. He's been a supportive husband, a protective dad, and someone who kept family drama out of the public eye. The fact that he's now directly calling out Kody for abandoning Janelle shows something huge has shifted in the Brown family. When the people who usually keep the peace start drawing hard lines, you know things have gotten beyond repair. But Caleb wasn't alone in that preview. Maddie immediately went to her mother's side, wrapping Janelle in a protective hug that said everything without words. Then came the whisper that polygamy watchers everywhere heard loud and clear. "We stand with you, Mom." Three women who've spent decades dealing with Kody's favoritism, his broken promises, and his pattern of emotional abandonment just got validation from their kids. The message is obvious. The enabling stops now. What makes this moment so powerful is that they chose to do it publicly. Maddie and Caleb could have handled this privately. They could have quietly distanced themselves from Kody while staying vague on camera. Instead, they chose confrontation. They chose to let millions of viewers see them. I refuse to pretend everything's fine when it clearly isn't. That's not acting on impulse. That's choosing to hold someone accountable. The Reddit thread analyzing this preview blew up with hundreds of comments within hours. Viewers immediately recognized that this rebellion is different from previous family fights. When Christine left Kody, it was emotional and painful, but ultimately about her personal journey. When Gabe and Garrison confronted their father during COVID, it was heartbreaking, but could be written off as young guys acting emotionally. But Maddie and Caleb represent something Kody can't easily brush aside. They're established adults with their own family, their own stability, their own credibility. They don't need anything from Kody, which means their confrontation comes from principle, not desperation. The question burning through every Sister Wives discussion right now is simple but important. What finally pushed Maddie and Caleb past their breaking point? After years of watching Kody's behavior, after witnessing his treatment of Janelle, after seeing the favoritism poured on Robyn while other family members were pushed aside, what was the specific moment that turned quiet disapproval into public rebellion? Something tells me the answer to that question is going to shape season 20 in ways even TLC's producers didn't expect. The preview promised fireworks, but based on Caleb's expression and Maddie's protective stance, we might be watching a full family revolution. But that single confrontation was just the beginning. The promotional clips reveal something even more important than one explosive moment. They show a pattern, a deliberate, coordinated plan that Maddie and Caleb have clearly been working on for a while. The visuals tell the story before anyone speaks. Maddie and Caleb standing shoulder to shoulder, not just near each other, but positioned deliberately, physically united in a way that shows exactly what they're doing. They're presenting a united front against Kody's favorite tactic, the one he's used for decades: divide and conquer, isolate family members, control the story through separation, and they're not having it. Multiple clips show Kody trying to talk to them separately. Classic manipulation playbook. Pull Maddie aside for a father-daughter conversation where he can use guilt and obligation. Corner Caleb with the respect your elders routine. Play them against each other if possible. Or at minimum, keep them from coordinating their responses. Every woman who survived polygamy watching these clips recognized the tactic immediately. It's the same strategy that kept Sister Wives from comparing notes for years. Keep everyone in their own lane. Manage relationships individually. Maintain control through information gaps. Except Maddie and Caleb aren't playing that game. The footage shows them literally moving as one unit. When Kody approaches Maddie, Caleb steps closer. When Kody tries to talk to Caleb separately, Maddie appears at his side. It's not aggressive. It's not confrontational. It's unmovable solidarity. We come as a package deal. You want to talk to one of us? You're talking to both of us. Then came Caleb's second on-camera statement, the one that has Reddit threads running for pages. Get your act together or don't expect our respect. Not a request, not a negotiation, an ultimatum delivered with the calm certainty of someone who's thought this through, talked it over extensively with his wife, and arrived at a firm boundary they're both committed to keeping. The wording matters here. Don't expect our respect isn't the same as we don't love you or we're cutting you off. It's a more sophisticated boundary. It acknowledges the relationship exists while refusing to pretend problematic behavior deserves admiration. It's the kind of language people use when they've been to therapy, read books about toxic family dynamics, and learned how to set limits without necessary cruelty. Caleb and Maddie aren't attacking Kody. They're simply withdrawing the pretense that his treatment of Janelle is acceptable. Viewers are drawing comparisons to earlier family rebellions. But what's striking is how different this one looks. When Christine left, it was emotional and painful, but ultimately individual. When the boys confronted Kody about COVID favoritism, it was raw and reactive. This feels planned, strategic. Maddie and Caleb have clearly spent considerable time talking about exactly how they want to handle this, what boundaries they're setting, and how they'll present those boundaries both privately and publicly. The United Front isn't just about this moment. It's about establishing a pattern that will hold long after the cameras stop rolling. Here's what every woman who's dealt with a manipulative family member knows. The isolation tactic only works if people stay isolated. The moment two people compare notes and stand together, the entire power dynamic shifts. Kody's watching his signature move become completely useless in real time. And based on the expression captured in those promotional clips, he knows it. The magician's trick has been exposed, and the next generation isn't impressed. But Maddie and Caleb aren't limiting their truth-telling to dramatic TLC confrontations. While season 20 cameras were rolling, Maddie was simultaneously building something Kody can't control, can't edit, and can't dismiss as reality TV drama. Her podcast, The Authentic Society, has become ground zero for unfiltered Brown family revelations, and the behind-the-scenes teasers she's been dropping on social media suggest this platform is about to become Kody's worst nightmare. The podcast itself represents a strategic masterstroke. Reality TV gives you screen time, sure, but it also gives producers final cut. They decide which conversations make the episode. They control pacing, context, framing. What makes it to air gets filtered through TLC's priorities. But a podcast? That's Maddie's territory. Her microphone, her editing choices, her ability to provide context and nuance that 30-second clips can never capture. And she's not doing this alone. Multiple sources confirm that Caleb has been appearing on episodes, that they're planning collaborative content specifically addressing Kody's behavior. This isn't Maddie venting solo about daddy issues. This is a married couple jointly documenting patterns they've both witnessed, comparing observations, building a case with the kind of supporting testimony that carries serious weight. The teasers Maddie's been dropping on social media have given listeners just enough to know what's coming. References to episodes exposing Kody's male menopause dramatics. That phrasing alone has Reddit threads running wild, because it suggests Maddie is going to tackle Kody's recent behavioral changes with same unflinching honesty she's brought to other topics. Not cruel mockery, clinical observation. This is what we've witnessed. This is how it's affected the family. These are the patterns we're no longer pretending not to see. But the land division teasers have got the sister wives community buzzing because property disputes are something Maddie can discuss with receipts. Coyote Pass isn't vague family dynamics or he said, she said emotional conflicts. It's documented property ownership, recorded deeds, financial transactions that leave paper trails. If Maddie and Caleb start walking through the timeline of who got what parcels, who paid for what expenses, how decisions got made about land distribution, they're moving from family grievances into territory that's verifiable, factual, impossible for Kody to dismiss as misunderstandings or hurt feelings. The decision to include Caleb as a regular collaborative voice amplifies the credibility exponentially because Caleb brings the outsider perspective that viewers have been craving for years. He didn't grow up in this family system. He doesn't have childhood loyalty clouding his judgment. He's not navigating decades of complicated history with Kody. He's simply someone who married a woman he loves, watched how his father treats her mother, and formed opinions based on observable behavior. When Caleb talks about what he's witnessed, it carries the weight of objectivity. This isn't an angry daughter with unresolved issues. This is a grown man saying, I've watched this unfold with fresh eyes, and here's what I see. The podcast format also allows Maddie and Caleb to control the timeline of revelations. They can release episodes strategically, building context gradually, making sure listeners understand the full scope before dropping major bombshells. It's the opposite of reality TV's chopped-up timeline. They can say, the truth-telling isn't contained to one season of television. It's ongoing, it's detailed, and it's reaching audiences who want the full story without TLC's commercial breaks and cliffhangers. The game, as they say, is changing. To understand why Maddie and Caleb's confrontation resonates so powerfully with viewers, we need to look back for a moment. This rebellion didn't come from a single incident. It's the result of years, decades even, of Maddie watching her father systematically abandon her mother during the moments that mattered most. Let's start with the clearest, most documented pattern. CEO protocols that somehow kept Kody away from Janelle's household for months while he maintained regular presence at Robyn's house. Viewers watched in real time as Kody established increasingly elaborate rules that just happened to create barriers between him and Janelle's family, while his access to Robyn remained uninterrupted. The mental gymnastics required to justify that disparity were Olympic level. And Maddie was watching, taking mental notes, seeing her mother wait by the phone while her father prioritized another household entirely. But COVID was just the most visible example of something much older. The Coyote Pass land disputes reveal a pattern that goes back years. Property that was supposedly being divided fairly among the family somehow resulted in Robyn's parcel being positioned most favorably. Decisions about who would build where, who would pay for what infrastructure, who would have access to which resources, all mysteriously tilted in one direction. Janelle, despite being the family's financial manager for years, despite her practical approach to money and property, somehow ended up pushed to the side in discussions about land she'd helped purchase. Every woman who's ever balanced the household budget while watching resources flow elsewhere knows exactly what that feels like. It's not dramatic betrayal. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's watching equity you've built get redirected. It's being told you're overreacting when you point out mathematical realities. It's the gaslighting that comes with financial favoritism dressed up as family decision-making. The emotional unavailability pattern runs even deeper. How many milestone moments did Kody miss for Janelle's kids? How many times did he schedule his rotation so he just happened to be elsewhere when something important was happening? The beauty of the polygamy structure from a manipulation standpoint is that there's always a built-in excuse. He was with another wife. He had obligations to another household. He can't be everywhere at once. Except the pattern of where he chose to be and where he chose not to be tells its own story. Maddie absorbed all of this throughout her childhood and young adulthood. She watched her mother make excuse after excuse for Kody's absences. She heard the rationalizations about plural marriage requiring sacrifice and understanding. She witnessed her mother's financial contributions funding a lifestyle that didn't equally benefit her. And somewhere along the way, Maddie started recognizing these patterns for what they actually were. Not unfortunate consequences of a complicated family structure, but deliberate choices masked as unavoidable circumstances. Here's the important thing that every person dealing with family dysfunction needs to understand. Parental favoritism isn't always dramatic or obvious. It's often subtle, systemic, justified through elaborate reasoning that sounds reasonable until you step back and look at the overall pattern. It's not one missed birthday. It's 20 years of priorities revealing themselves through resource allocation, time management, emotional availability, and crisis response. When you track where someone consistently shows up versus where they consistently don't, you're seeing their actual values regardless of what they claim those values to be. Red flags for recognizing patterns of abandonment in family systems. Does the person have elaborate justifications for why they can't be present that somehow always apply to the same family members? Do financial decisions consistently benefit one household while others are told resources are limited? During crisis, who gets immediate support and who gets told to be patient? Over years, do excuses form a pattern where the same people are repeatedly deprioritized? Maddie watched this pattern play out across her entire childhood. She watched it continue into her adulthood. She watched it affect her mother's security, her brother's relationships with their father, the fundamental structure of family resources and attention. And at a certain point, pattern recognition transforms into something more powerful: the refusal to participate in pretending those patterns don't exist, the decision to name what's happening out loud, the choice to stop protecting someone from the consequences of their own consistent behavior. That's where Maddie and Caleb are standing now, and they're standing there because the historical record supports every word of their confrontation. The moment that season 20 sneak peek hit the internet, the Sister Wives Reddit community transformed into something like a digital town hall meeting. The mega thread dedicated to episode 1 exploded with hundreds of comments within the first few hours. But what's fascinating isn't just how many people responded, it's the specific nature of what viewers are recognizing. This confrontation feels fundamentally different from every previous Brown family conflict, and the community is explaining exactly why. Scroll through the comments and you'll see the same observations repeated in different words. This isn't reactive. This isn't an emotional explosion. This is calculated boundary setting from people who've thought through exactly what they're doing and why. One highly upvoted comment captured it perfectly. Caleb's not yelling. He's not crying. He's just stating facts and consequences. That's what makes this so powerful. The comparisons to earlier rebellions are revealing precisely because they highlight what's different now. When Christine left Kody, the community rallied behind her courage, but recognized it as a deeply personal journey. Her leaving was about her own liberation, her own realization that she deserved better than perpetual third wife status. Viewers celebrated her escape, but understood it as individual salvation. Christine was saving herself. When Gabe and Garrison confronted Kody during the CO protocol disputes, the community's heart broke watching young men beg their father to treat them fairly. Those confrontations were raw, painful, born of immediate hurt. Teenagers and young adults trying to make their father see them, acknowledge them, prioritize them. The emotional vulnerability was powerful, but also made those moments easier for Kody to dismiss or diminish. He could frame it as kids being dramatic, not understanding adult complexities, reacting emotionally rather than thinking clearly. But Maddie and Caleb represent something Kody can't as easily deflect or diminish. They're established adults in their 30s with their own stable family unit. They're not asking Kody anything, not seeking his approval, not dependent on his resources, not trying to win his attention. They're simply observing his behavior, naming it accurately, and setting boundaries based on what they've witnessed. That changes everything. Multiple Reddit threads are tracking the specific language Caleb used. "You've abandoned mom again," not "we feel abandoned," not "it seems like you're not prioritizing mom." Definitive statement: "You have done this thing multiple times. We've watched it happen." The word "again" does so much work in that sentence because it establishes pattern rather than isolated incident. This isn't about one disagreement or one missed visit. This is about documented, repeated behavior. The community is also noting something sophisticated about how Maddie positioned herself in that confrontation.
She didn't dominate the moment. She let Caleb speak first, let him draw the boundary, then move to her mother's side in support. That sequencing matters. It shows coordination. It demonstrates they've discussed this, planned their approach, decided together how they want to handle things. Maddie's not a daughter emotionally exploding at her father. She's a woman supporting her husband's justified confrontation while simultaneously protecting her mother. Viewers are drawing parallels to other reality TV moments where family members finally spoke truth to power. But they're also noting crucial differences. This isn't a reunion special confrontation designed for maximum drama. This is happening in real time in the flow of regular family interaction. TLC didn't manufacture this moment. They just happened to have cameras rolling when Maddie and Caleb decided enough was enough.
The thread analyzing Maddie's body language in those clips has become its own fascinating study. The way she physically positions herself between Kody and Janelle. The protective stance that communicates, "You'll have to go through me to continue hurting her." The calm expression that suggests this isn't impulsive anger, but considered action. Women across the community are recognizing something they've experienced in their own lives. The moment you stop trying to fix a dysfunctional family member and start simply protecting the people they're hurting. One comment that received hundreds of upvotes summarized the collective sentiment perfectly. This is what it looks like when the next generation refuses to enable the previous generation's dysfunction. Maddie and Caleb aren't trying to change Kody. They're just refusing to pretend his behavior is acceptable. That's growth. That's maturity. That's long overdue. The mega thread isn't just documenting viewer reactions, it's capturing a community recognizing that the Brown family dynamics have shifted in a way that can't be walked back. The rebellion isn't coming from a place of hurt-seeking healing, it's coming from a place of clarity, demanding accountability. And that makes all the difference. Here's why Caleb's involvement in this confrontation matters more than viewers might initially realize. He's not a Brown. He didn't grow up in this system. He doesn't have childhood loyalty clouding his judgment or decades of complicated history making him question his own perceptions. Caleb married Maddie and walked into an ongoing situation with completely fresh eyes, and what he saw was clear enough that he's willing to go on camera and call it out. That outsider perspective carries enormous weight with viewers who spent years wondering what an objective observer would think of Kody's behavior. When biological family members criticize each other, there's always the possibility of old grudges, misunderstandings, or personal dynamics skewing perceptions. But when someone who has no childhood baggage, no sibling rivalry, no competing for parental attention looks at the situation and says, "This isn't okay," that validation hits differently. Caleb's transformation is also significant. He didn't arrive in the Brown family guns blazing with criticism. He started exactly where most sons-in-law start. Respectful, diplomatic, staying in his lane, supporting his wife privately while keeping family dynamics at arm's length publicly. The fact that he's moved from that neutral position to active confrontation signals that what he's witnessed crosses lines he can't ignore. Something shifted his calculation from, "This is complicated family stuff I should stay out of," to, "This is hurting someone I love and I'm drawing boundaries." Women who've watched their own partners navigate toxic in-law dynamics recognize exactly what's happening here. There's a specific moment when a spouse transitions from supporting their partner privately to actively defending them publicly. It happens when the behavior becomes undeniable, when the pattern is so clear that staying neutral feels like complicity. Caleb's reached that point, and his willingness to risk family harmony to protect Janelle signals what he's witnessed. The educational element here is crucial. Outside perspective in recognizing unhealthy family dynamics is incredibly powerful precisely because it's not tangled up in history and obligation. Sometimes you need someone who doesn't have years of "but he's your father" conditioning to look at behavior objectively and name it for what it is. That's not disrespect, that's clarity. And Caleb's bringing that clarity to a family system that survived for years on everyone pretending not to see obvious patterns. His credibility also stems from what he's not doing.
He's not attacking Kody's character or making it personal. He's simply observing behavior and setting boundaries. Get your act together or don't expect our respect isn't cruel, it's consequence. It's the kind of boundary healthy adults set with people whose behavior doesn't align with their values. Caleb's not trying to destroy Kody. He's just refusing to pretend abandonment is acceptable. Family practices. What's particularly fascinating about Maddie's role in this confrontation is how carefully she's balanced competing loyalties. Make no mistake, this is strategic positioning at its finest. She's not the angry daughter having an emotional breakdown. She's a woman who's thought through exactly how to protect her mother while maintaining enough relationship structure with her father that she's not burning every bridge. That takes sophistication most people don't develop until they've done considerable work on themselves.
Watch how Maddie lets Caleb lead the confrontation. That's not weakness or hiding behind her husband. That's tactical brilliance. By allowing Caleb to draw the primary boundary, Maddie creates space for herself to remain in the supportive daughter role. She's not the one saying, "You've abandoned mom again." She's the one wrapping her mother in a hug and whispering solidarity. Both actions matter, but the positioning allows her to maintain multiple relationships simultaneously. She can still be Kody's daughter while being Janelle's protector. The boundaries Caleb draws don't require Maddie to completely sever connection. The podcast choices reveal even more strategic thinking. Maddie's framing issues through educational lenses rather than purely personal attacks. Talking about male menopause dramatics positions Kody's behavior as potentially understandable phenomena rather than pure villain. She's giving her father an out, a framework for understanding his own behavior that doesn't require him to be a monster. That's generous, actually. It creates space for potential reconciliation down the road if Kody ever becomes capable of acknowledging his patterns. The land division focus is equally strategic. Property disputes are factual. They're documented, they're less emotionally charged than accusations about love and favoritism. Maddie can walk through what happened with Coyote Pass using deeds, financial records, and timeline documentation. That's not emotional venting about daddy issues. That's an adult woman pointing out documented inequity. The shift from feelings to facts makes her position nearly impossible to argue against. What Maddie is doing is creating what therapists call sustainable boundaries. She's not cutting Kody off completely. She's not demanding he gravel or completely transform. She's simply saying, here's what we've observed. Here's what we're no longer participating in. Here's what needs to change if you want our respect. That leaves room for relationship evolution without requiring her to deny reality or enable bad behavior. The decision to do collaborative podcast episodes with Caleb rather than solo rants is also telling. It positions them as a united partnership rather than Maddie as solo crusader. Two adults independently arriving at similar conclusions about what they've witnessed. That's corroboration. That's credible testimony that's much harder to dismiss as one person's skewed perspective. Compare this to how some adult children handle problematic parents. Full cutoff with no explanation, public social media attacks, constant rehashing of childhood wounds. Maddie is doing none of that. She's being specific about behavior, clear about boundaries, strategic about platform, and careful about maintaining some relationship structure, even while refusing to enable dysfunction. That's the approach of someone who's done the work, read the books, probably talked to a therapist, and arrived at boundaries that protect her peace while leaving doors cracked for potential future healing. The whisper to Janelle in that preview clip captures everything. "We stand with you, Mom." Not "we hate Dad," or "we're cutting him off," or "he's terrible." Simply, "we see you. We support you. We're not pretending this is okay." That's powerful solidarity without unnecessary cruelty. It validates Janelle's experience without requiring Maddie to completely destroy her relationship with Kody. It's the kind of nuanced boundary setting that only comes from considerable emotional maturity and strategic thinking about long-term family dynamics.
Let's talk about why the Coyote Pass property disputes have become the lightning rod for this entire confrontation. Family dynamics can be murky, emotional, subject to interpretation, but property leaves paper trails. Property has deeds and purchase agreements and financial transactions that can't be rewritten through selective memory. When Maddie and Caleb reference land division schemes on their podcast teasers, they're moving into territory where facts trump feelings. Here's what viewers know from watching this saga unfold over multiple seasons. The Brown family purchased Coyote Pass property with the stated intention of building homes for all the wives, creating a unified family compound. The vision was equity, togetherness. Everyone finally settled in one location after years of moving. That was the dream, sold to viewers and presumably to the family members investing money and emotion into this plan. But the execution reveals a different story.
Robyn's parcel ended up positioned most favorably. Access, views, proximity to amenities, all mysteriously aligned in her direction. Meanwhile, Janelle, despite being the family's financial mastermind for decades, despite her practical approach to money and investment, found herself pushed to the side in decision-making about property she'd helped fund. The math doesn't math, as the kids say these days. For Maddie and Caleb, this isn't abstract family dynamics. This is their mother's financial security. This is retirement planning, asset accumulation, return on investment for years of labor. When you watch your mother contribute financially to family property, only to see distribution favor another wife, that's not hurt feelings. That's documented inequity affecting real-world outcomes. It crystallizes every vague complaint about favoritism into concrete evidence. The land disputes also represent something Maddie can discuss with receipts. She can walk through timelines, who paid what, when decisions were made, how agreements evolved or fell apart. She doesn't have to rely on, "It felt like Dad loved Robyn more." She can say, "Here's what the property division reveals about who was prioritized when resources were allocating." That's the kind of argument that holds up under scrutiny because it's based on verifiable facts, rather than subjective interpretation. This is why property disputes so often become the breaking point in family conflicts. Money makes abstract dysfunction concrete. Financial inequity provides tangible proof of patterns that might otherwise be dismissed as perception or sensitivity. Every woman who's watched a family inheritance get distributed unequally, who's seen divorce assets divided unfairly, or who's contributed to household finances only to be excluded from decision-making understands exactly why Coyote Pass matters so much to this story. It's not just land, it's evidence. The response to Maddie and Caleb's confrontation has gone beyond typical reality TV fan discussion. Across Facebook groups, Reddit threads, Twitter conversations, and group texts, the Sister Wives community has transformed into something like a massive validation network. Women are sharing their own stories of setting boundaries with problematic parents, recognizing themselves in Maddie's protective stance, celebrating Caleb's willingness to speak up. What's particularly striking is the generational element viewers are identifying. This represents a broader cultural shift where adult children are refusing to protect toxic parent behavior simply because that's family. The old script of keeping dysfunction private, making excuses for difficult relatives, prioritizing family harmony over personal integrity is being rewritten in real time. Maddie and Caleb are part of a generation that's read the books, done the therapy, learned the language of boundaries and healthy relationships. The comments reveal how deeply this resonates with women who've navigated similar dynamics in their own families. "I wish I'd had the courage to stand up for my mom like this. My husband stayed silent for years while my father treated my mother terribly, and I'll always regret we didn't draw boundaries sooner. Watching Maddie protect Jeanette is healing something in me." The confrontation is functioning as collective therapy for viewers who see their own times family patterns reflected. The validation extends beyond individual stories to broader recognition of manipulation tactics. Women are sharing their experiences with family members who use the exact same isolation strategies Kody employs. The divide and conquer approach, the elaborate justifications for unequal treatment, the gaslighting when someone names the pattern. Seeing Maddie and Caleb refuse to participate in those tactics is giving other people permission to recognize and resist similar dynamics in their own lives. The educational element here is profound.
When family loyalty conflicts with personal integrity, you're allowed to choose integrity. You're allowed to protect people being hurt, even if the person hurting them is family. You're allowed to set boundaries with parents whose behavior doesn't align with your values. Those permissions sound obvious written out, but they contradict decades of cultural messaging about unconditional family loyalty and respecting your elders regardless of their behavior. The Sister Wives community isn't just watching a reality TV confrontation unfold. They're witnessing a case study in healthy boundary setting that validates their own struggles and shows paths forward for people trapped in similar dynamics. Maddie and Caleb's united front has become bigger than one family's drama. It's become a cultural moment about refusing to enable dysfunction just because it's wrapped in family obligation. So here we stand at the threshold of season 20, with the entire Brown family dynamic fundamentally shifted. The preview that's dominated every Sister Wives discussion isn't just a teaser for one dramatic episode. It's the opening shot in what promises to be the most important season this family has ever filmed. Maddie and Caleb's rebellion changes the rules of engagement in ways that ripple far beyond one confrontation. The immediate question burning through viewer discussions is deceptively simple. How does Kody respond when he can't dismiss, deflect, or divide his way out of accountability? His signature moves have been exposed.
The isolation tactics don't work when people stand together. The elaborate justifications fall flat when someone calmly states observable fact. The emotional manipulation loses power when the targets refuse to engage with it. What does Kody do when his playbook becomes obsolete? History suggests he'll double down initially. Men who've relied on control for decades rarely pivot gracefully when that control slips. The question is whether doubling down speeds up the family fracture or whether something shifts in Kody that allows for actual reflection. Based on patterns established over 20 seasons, betting on the former seems safer than hoping for the latter. But stranger things have happened. Then there's a Robyn's position to consider. Her favorite status has been the unspoken foundation of family inequity for years now. Maddie and Caleb are preparing to discuss that favoritism explicitly through podcast episodes, complete with property division receipts. How does Robyn navigate being publicly identified as the beneficiary of a system that pushed other wives aside? Does she acknowledge the disparity, defend it, or pretend it doesn't exist? Each option carries consequences. The stakes for Janelle are equally significant. For the first time in this family's documented history, she has visible, vocal support from the next generation for setting boundaries with Kody. Her daughter and son-in-law aren't just privately sympathizing, they're publicly validating her experience and backing her position. That changes the calculation for someone who spent decades managing Kody's behavior through accommodation and patience. When you've got backup, you negotiate differently. What about the other adult children watching this unfold? Gabe and Garrison already confronted Kody during COVID with heartbreaking results. Christine's kids have navigated their own journeys toward boundaries with their father. Now, Maddie and Caleb are demonstrating a different approach. One that's strategic rather than purely emotional. One that sets limits without requiring complete cutoff. Does their model inspire other family members to speak up? Does the united front expand to include additional voices? The promotional clip suggests season 20 isn't giving viewers one explosive confrontation followed by a return to normal. This is sustained tension, ongoing boundary negotiations, family members choosing sides or attempting impossible neutrality. The preview promised that multiple family members would be taking stands this season. If Maddie and Caleb's confrontation is the opening act, what revelations are waiting in the wings? TLC has built this franchise on the premise of unconventional family structure navigating modern life. But what the network stumbled into documenting is something far more universal. The slow-motion dissolution of a system built on inequity, the generational shift from enabling to accountability, the moment when people who've been hurt stop pretending not to notice.
That's compelling television precisely because it's deeply relatable human experience dressed in polygamy-specific details. The through line connecting every major Sister Wives moment over 20 seasons has been the same: women finding their voices, boundaries being established, dysfunction being named instead of normalized. Maddie and Caleb's rebellion is the latest chapter in that ongoing story, but it carries different weight because it's coming from people who don't need anything from Kody, aren't asking for his approval, and have credibility he can't easily attack. They're simply observing, documenting, and refusing to participate in pretending. That's revolutionary in a system that survived on everyone agreeing not to speak certain truths out loud. Season 20 will reveal whether this confrontation becomes a catalyst for larger family transformation or simply documents the final fractures in a family structure that's been cracking for years. Either way, the stakes couldn't be higher. Maddie and Caleb drew a line. Now we get to watch whether that line holds, whether others join them on their side of it, and whether Kody has any capacity to meet the moment with something other than the tactics that created this mess in the first place. Do you think Maddie's podcast will uncover even bigger revelations about the Coyote Pass land distribution? Which moment from the season 20 preview has you most excited to see play out in full context? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tap like, hit subscribe, keep those notifications on. A fresh video is already queued up, and something tells me the next round of Brown family boundary setting will be even more intense than what we've just witnessed.